Are we planning hanging out on same meeting in person or online?
I was thinking we do it online. I mean, I'll probably have like a short essay one that I'll grade myself.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like it does. I mean, it's not like I really care. At least there's not very many of you in here. But is it easier for you guys to take it on the computer?
Yes.
So just click, 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 click.
Yeah.
I'm a paper person.
Okay.
It's okay, I can take it online.
Well, we can chat about that more. I mean, we still have a couple weeks. Not a big deal. Yeah. So okay, I'm going to jump right in here because I got some awesome stuff for you today. Let me see my prompts here because I want to stay organized here. So, we started this particular leg of the class. We talked about this idea of like the long 19th century, which is 1789 to 1914, which is where our class is going to end here. And of course, what huge world-altering event happened in 1789, which kicks this off?
American Constitution.
The French Revolution. The French Revolution, because the French Revolution completely destroys old Europe. No longer are we going to be talking about these personal possessions and old feudal kingdoms. No. Now we're going to be talking about nation states. We're going to be talking about highly centralized, bureaucratic, urbanizing, democratizing nation states. Remember when Louis Philippe becomes king, he is no longer Louis Philippe by the grace of God, King of France. He is Louis Philippe by the grace of God and the Constitution, King of the French. The French. He is a representation, a manifestation of the French people. So 1789. And remember, there's all sorts of innovations that come about here. That professionalized, secularized bureaucracy, and the mass armies, right? They go steamroll all across Europe, and in an era of intense state competition, if you don't want to be their little satellite for the rest of your lives, you need to start making those kinds of internal reforms yourself so that you can be able to compete, and this is exactly what happens. And so, we are moving, so this is a process, it's a long process here, but we move towards secular, bureaucratic, democratic national states. We have industrialization, which is abetting this process and occurring simultaneously, and it's leading to urbanization, right? More and more people are moving off the farms into the city. This is causing kind of an identity crisis as all these different people whose lives had previously been entirely local need a new identity, and the nation, members of the nation. By the turn of the century, of course, European empires are dominating the globe pretty much everywhere outside of the United States, which itself, of course, is an empire of European stock. Remember, Spain still has an empire. Portugal still has an empire. Belgium, the Netherlands, France, England, Germany, Italy, all empires. So when we say something like France, goes to war, like we're talking about the French Empire, the British Empire. These are all empires. And Russia, the Ottomans and Austria, these were land empires, if you want to think of it that way, because they had basically been these expansionist cores, right? There's a Russian core, but even today, if we look at the Russian Federation, I believe Russian is now in the minority. Like it is the plurality, but if you take all the different ethnic minorities, they outnumber the Russian core. Same thing in Austria, right? You have those Austrian Germans who are vastly outnumbered by the combination of Slovenes, Slovaks, Croats, Hungarians, etc. And then, of course, you also have the Ottomans. You have the Ottoman Turks who are trying to hold down the Kurds and the Arabs and the North African provinces. So these are all empires. These are all imperial entities battling it out with each other. We saw the creation of new states from Germany and Italy, which remember, this is a gradual process that's taking place. But Italy starts being formed really in about 48. Italy, circa 48, if you remember, that was the first Italian War of Independence, which goes super terribly. Remember, this is part of the revolutions of 1848. They get crushed by the Austrians. Okay. And then the final one occurred in 71. Remember, this is when they took over the Papal States and basically made the Pope their captive. And this happened at the same time as the Franco-Prussian War, which was the Third War of German unification. If you need to, you can go back and rewatch that lecture where I run through all these wars of unification, because it is complicated. But I talked about how there's a lot of interdependent stuff going on here. the French had told the Italians, hey, we helped you boot out the Austrians, but don't you touch His Holiness the Pope or any of his possessions. And the new Italian state was like, well, you know, we did just kind of win a ton of territory, we need to consolidate it, and there's all sorts of things we need to hash out constitutionally and different arrangements. Okay, well wait, we don't want to alienate the French, our allies. But then when the French are incapacitated by the Prussians smashing them, they move in right away and take over. The Pope and the secular Italian state will eventually be reconciled. That takes place after World War I in the Lateran Treaty. Then German unification. United Germany. Remember, this is going to be constituted from Prussia. Prussia is going to be the entity that creates Germany. And in the case of Italy, do you remember which kingdom leads the charge there? It's a northwestern kingdom. Its king becomes the new king of Italy.
France?
Just as it abuts France, yes. It abuts France. It's Piedmont. Piedmont, that little kingdom right there. If this is Italy, which of course this is an exact drawing of the peninsula, it's this kingdom right here where Turin is, that's the capital city there, Turin. And then like Venice is over here, and this is Lombardy and Milan, and then the Pope is down here in Rome, just chilling. So this is the big kingdom here that takes charge of Italian unification. In the case of Germany, it's Prussia. It's Prussia. And they fight 3 wars for German unification, and this takes place from 64 to 71. There are uprisings in the German states in 48, if you recall, but these are either put down or conciliated with concessions. Depends. There is not a actual war for independence there, though, or for unification. And then Serbia, Bulgaria, and Romania. These are our key Balkan states that get created. Now, Serbia, Romania, and Bulgaria. And I'm actually going to spend some time in the Balkans today, so I'm going to pull up a map to just kind of show you all stuff. But so these were ruled until the first Balkan War in 1911-12, First Balkan War. They were ruled by who? What empire were they a part of? Who controlled the Balkan Peninsula? Going way back to the start of the course. They had the Ottomans. This was the Ottomans, right? Remember, the whole reason that the Europeans are going and doing deep water exploration is because the Ottomans had taken Constantinople. And this had happened in 1453, but prior to that, they had moved into the Balkan Peninsula. They had moved very far up, in fact. We saw during the 30 Years' War, for example, one of the reasons the Holy Roman Emperor wasn't able to devote his time to stomping out those pesky Protestant princes is because the Ottomans were trying to besiege Vienna. This is a huge problem. We've got problems everywhere. Holy Roman Emperor was a tough gig at that period of time. The Ottomans. Ottoman control over these provinces had been growing weaker. Russia causing lots of problems for them here because these are Orthodox Slavic entities. Not that there weren't other people there. There were obviously, Bosniak Muslims and things of that nature, but these are Orthodox Slavs, right? And part of the Russian national identity is that they are sort of the father of the Orthodox Slavic peoples. And so they're looking to, and of course, the Russians have been battling with the Ottomans for about 200 years at this point. Ottoman losses in the Caucasus and in the Black Sea region are coming at the hands of the Russians because the Russians want what? The Straits. Yes, the Dardanelles, the Turkish Straits. They want access to that. Now, there are a number of reasons for this. One of them is strategic, of course. They want to have access to sail their warships and out there and get to the Mediterranean. The other one is trade, though. Remember, this is an age of wooden boat sailing, so you don't really want to be trying to, and they don't have railroads and whatnot, but you have lots of grain that you can export to the world market. but you need ports to do that, like on the Black Sea, for example. But you also need to know that you can get your grain out to world markets. Well, one thing that would frequently happen is the Ottoman Sultanate would close the straits to Russian shipping, not just warships, commercial vessels. So the Ottomans kind of had their thumb right on the Russian economic artery there. And they could close the straits to Russian shipping if they wanted to. They could cause serious pain to the Russian economy by doing that. So these are created. They had their origins in kingdoms that had existed autonomously prior to the Ottomans coming in and defeating them. For example, let's see, the Serbians are defeated at Kosovo, the Battle of Kosovo. The Hungarians, which of course Hungary had been reconquered by the Austrians, but they were defeated at the Battle of Mohacs. So all of these Orthodox Slavic states had been one by one defeated hundreds of years before this time by the Ottomans, and their peoples had just become subject peoples, right? But during the age of nationalism, they're going to be recreated. Identities are going to be resurrected. Mythologies constructed around things like the Battle of Kosovo. And this is going to cause huge problems for the Ottomans. Remember, this had started with the Greek revolt of 21, which had succeeded, and Serbia going to be revolting, Bulgarians, Romanians, and they're going to be helped by the Russians and the Austrians to some extent. This culminates in that great Russo-Turkish War, the Russo-Turkish War of 77-78, which we had talked about. This grants them all virtual independence. They are technically still part of the Ottoman Empire, but no one is confused. The Ottoman writ does not run deeply there at all. Basically, they're going to do whatever they want. And the Russians allow, at this point, this critically here, this is the war where Bosnia and Herzegovina is occupied by Austria. Why? Okay, why? I'm going to pull up my map here now, because I also need to explain Albania, the origins of Albania. I'll put Albania, well, I'll just pull up the map here and show you what I mean.
Did they want more minorities to have to deal with?
No, you're right to key in on that, because this was a huge controversy, because there were a lot of policymakers in the empire who were like, are you completely crazy? We don't want more Serbs and more Slovaks in the empire. This is a terrible idea. And I'm going to talk about that more in the run-up to World War I. Here, let me just pull this up real quick. Okay. So here is Albania, and here is Montenegro. Okay? And here's Bosnia and Herzegovina. Okay. So, the reason, so remember, Serbia is created as an autonomous entity at this point. It has its autonomy within the empire under a king, under a Serbian king. It's the Obrenović kings at this point. They haven't been murdered yet by the Karađorđevićes, but we know that's going to happen in 1903. But look, what does Serbia not have here? Let's look at Serbia. What do they not have?
Water.
Bingo, ports. They have no access to the sea. Austria, this is a huge goal for them. Do not allow them to have access to the Adriatic Sea, because this is the only way Austria has to get out into the Mediterranean and to engage in any kind of commerce. And they're already dealing with Italy. And remember, we said that Italy and Austria are technically allies, but they are in conflict over this sea here. And the last thing Austria wants is a Slavic power getting in the mix as well here. So they insist on occupying Bosnia and Herzegovina to deny access to Serbia of this waterway here. The Austrians accept it. The Austrians insist on this. The British back them up. And the Russians concede the point. They say, okay, you can occupy it. And remember, critically, in the treaty of San Stefano, that ends this war and creates these independent Balkan states who are going to cause so much trouble, ominous foreshadowing, is that at some point in the future, if Austria decides it wants to annex Bosnia and Herzegovina, it can, so long as it consults with Russia, consults with the Tsar and his ministers prior to that, and some form of compensation can be agreed. Okay? This is the one, yes. And so when the Bosnian annexation crisis happens in 1908, remember, when Austria goes and says, "Hey, Russia, listen, we're gonna go ahead and annex this now," and the minister says, "Hey, that's fine. We just want you to back us up with our new friends, the British, and just let us get some better access to the straits." And Austria's like, "Yeah, sure, fine, whatever." And so they announce, "Hey, we're going to annex it," and then Britain tells the Russians, "We're not that close, bud." And then the Russian minister, in order to kind of save his own skin, save his own job, basically says, "The Austrians tricked me. Those devious Germans, they lied to me." But this is also why Albania is created. Albania is created. I'm going to talk about this later in the lecture, but as long as I have the map up and I'm talking about why Austria was pursuing the policies they did, again, in the First Balkan War in 1911, 1912, an independent Albania is carved out here. Remember, they're pushing the Ottomans out of Europe. Pushing them out of Europe. And now we have this new territory called Albania that's been freed from Ottoman control. And of course, there are such things as Albanians, a small ethnic minority people there. And again, the idea was, well, shouldn't this be part of Serbia? Shouldn't this be part of Serbia? And once again, Austria says, never. No way. No way are we allowing, look at this, now we're getting right on the choke point here. The choke point here, they say no way. And Italy also says no way, because Italy also doesn't want a Slavic power in there. And the British, and so of course the Germans back them up, and the British also back them up because they don't want to see a war over this. So, yeah, this is sort of the strategic thinking here. Okay? So, I'm going to jump back now, but I just wanted to mention that. Okay, so our things to remember here. I'm going to shut this off real quick and start writing on the board again.
Countries have such a big significance.
Do what?
They have such a big significance then. I think their population combined today is a lot smaller than Michigan.
All these Balkan states?
You know, like Montenegro has a population of like 700,000 people.
Montenegro, yeah, they don't really have the ability to support a super large population. Montenegro is, I know I've mentioned to you guys about like topography and how important topography is. Montenegro is basically just mountains. It's like just mountains. It's one of the reasons that the Ottomans never really pacified Montenegro. They sort of nominally controlled it.
When we went there, their military was building a road up a mountain. That's like the only use they have for their military.
Nice. Okay, I'm gonna write an acronym up here. You have to play with the spelling. You have to play with the spelling a little bit, but this is how you can remember the things that are setting the context. So I'm going to be jumping into our case-by-case studies, but I want you to remember militarism, arms race, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. Maine. Okay? These are the context. As we're going to see, all of this combined, yes, this is the broad framework for why World War I happens. But World War I wasn't some ineluctable force of history that, if I drop this marker, no amount of our decisions, what we think, is going to impact whether or not this thing falls on the ground. These things made Europe very geopolitically dangerous, very precarious. As we saw, there was a lot of conflict going on in the 10 to 15 years prior to World War I. It wasn't as though Europe had been peacefully slumbering and then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, the Archduke's been shot and now we all need to fight each other to the death. Not at all. There were deliberate decisions and critically miscalculations. What we're going to see here is that all the actors involved believe that the other power wasn't going to go to war over this issue, and that their claim was right and the other guy's claim was wrong, and that everyone knew that. It's just an incredible confluence of errors, of judgment, of miscalculation. But these are the things you want to keep in mind. Militarism, conscript armies. It was now regular for young men to spend a period in the army and then to spend time in the reserves. Militarism, military parades, the cult of the military. This is when this is born. The military as the soul of the nation, the essence of the nation. Arms race. Remember, you need to have the best, most modern armaments in order to compete in these battles. They had seen many battles fought in which slightly older armaments are just eviscerated by newer ones. You have to keep building, and if your neighbor orders 1 million rounds worth of machine gun ammunition, well, you might want to think about getting some machine gun ammunition as well. In fact, there's a very famous instance where this French arms maker succeeded in putting a notice in one of the German papers to the effect that that Germany was going to be ordering 20,000 machine guns or something, and so the French government then hurried and ordered 20,000 machine guns from that same company. And so, there was like a kind of early military-industrial complex going on there. In fact, Schneider-Creusot, which was one of the French arms makers, Poincaré, the French president, had been their legal counsel for many years for this French arms manufacturer. The alliance system. The alliance system. This is critically important because you have mutual defense pacts now. That are designed with specific enemies in mind. It's not that war didn't break out previously in Europe. It's not that you didn't have allies. But for really one of the first times, we see multiple alignments of these powers where it's understood in advance who these alliances are designed to fight. Imperialism, the race for territories, conflict over zones of influence, especially in places like Africa, and then nationalism. Remember, nationalism had gone in 1789 from being this revolutionary upsurge that's going to liberate all the peoples of Europe and we're all going to live in harmony, to being more of a top-down, state-inculcated nationalism where it's us against them. Gains for their nation come only at the expense of gains that could have happened for our nation. It becomes very zero-sum. And it's an incredible motivating ideology. I'm going to dive into Serbia in just a second. I just want to recall quick notes on America at this time. America is busy consolidating its hold over its new colonies. Remember, in 1898, the United States had fought its war with Spain, and it had taken its first real overseas colonies. Well, it didn't end in 1898. Most of you know that the war was super successful, and Teddy Roosevelt rode up the hill, and we won in like 10 minutes, and it was super cool. Well, then, the problem is, the war actually continued for many years after. It continued for about 8 more years. And in the Philippines, it resulted in the United States military needing to kill upwards of 100,000 Filipino insurgents. So, the Philippines were not pacified until about 1907. That's also where the .38 was invented, the .38 Special, the cartridge. Basically, the old style .45 long Colt couldn't penetrate these wooden shields that the Filipino warriors used, and so they created a more powerful cartridge, the .38 Special. Where that came from. If you're interested, that's where that came from. They used those in police guns until like the 80s when they started switching to like 9mm and 40 Smith & Wesson. So, long time. Notes on Japan. Japan now dominates Korea. Remember, in the 1890s, Japan had won its first war, would bash down China. Then in 1905, wins its second war, bashes down Russia. So now they are the dominant player in the Far East, and they're allied with Britain. Quick notes on Latin America. They are all super weak independent republics who, no offense to them, do not matter for the rest of our story. Notes on the Middle East. These are still the domains of the Ottomans, but their control over them is very weak. And remember, these are Turkmen. They're coming from up here, right? They're coming from up here, like Turkestan, Turkey. How do they spell it now? They changed the spelling. Now it's like Turkiya or something like that. Whatever. Turkestan, Turkmenistan, all the Turk stuff, right? All up here. Well, the guys down here in like modern day Saudi Arabia, they're what? They're Arabs, right? Arabia, Arabs. So they resent being ruled by these Turks. Well, that's where, you guys familiar with the story of Lawrence of Arabia? Okay, so one of the British tactics in World War I is going to be to land some, like, basically, like, foreign service officers is what we would call them, to, like, encourage the Arabs to rise up against the Turks. And they promised them all sorts of great stuff. They promised them independent kingdoms and all this different stuff. And unfortunately, this is where the conflict between the Arabs and the future state of Israel comes from. Is because at the same time, during World War I, the British are promising the Arab monarchs that they'll have all this territory, that these will be their kingdoms and whatnot, independent kingdoms, if they rise up against the Ottomans and help Britain win the war. At the same time, though, the British government, in order to get financial support from important Jewish financial players, such as Baron de Rothschild, they're promising that, oh yeah, if you help us win, we'll make you a state of Israel, you know? And, you know, they're in a pinch. Britain's in a huge pinch at this point, okay? So they're promising everything to everybody, and they'll just sort it out later. That's where that comes from. So that's the Middle East. And then quick notes on China. China is in huge trouble at this point. They are being preyed upon by Russia. They're being preyed upon by Japan. There's internal revolts, attempted palace coups. The Qing dynasty is falling apart, and there will be a revolution at this critical juncture. I think it's in 1912. And so they're not really a part of the war. They do send some laborers. As I said, they're nominally on the side of the Entente powers. But this is a period of intense Chinese weakness. We don't go into this, but in the class, but this is sort of their warlord period, is what they call it, where China is basically fragmented and ruled by like different military governors. So that's China. That's the context here. So we are now going to move on to case studies here for the individual members here. I am basically, I wrote this up to be like the eve of the war, okay? So in June, late June is when the assassination is going to happen. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand. He is the heir to the Austrian throne. He's a reformer. This is critical to note. He believed that the key to the monarchy's survival in an age of nationalism was a federated structure. That, okay, we've got a Hungarian part of the empire, a state for them. We've got an Austrian part of the empire for the Austrian Germans. And not that there weren't ethnic minorities in there that were unhappy, right? Like the Czechs, the Bohemians, they didn't consider themselves German, but they were part of that area. But his idea was, look, now we need to create an independent kingdom of the Slavs that's part of the Austrian Empire. Now, this was not super popular. This was not super popular by the existing power players. In fact, when he is shot and killed, the Hungarian leadership is kind of like, whew, whew, that would have been awful. So, like, you know, his ideas are not popular. He's a reformer, and reformers are always disliked. But he's going to be killed in June. So I'm basically taking us right up to like May. This is everything that's going on up until like May 1914. This is what's going on in the States around May 1914. And I'm going to start with everyone's favorite troublemaker, Serbia. Because really, the war is Serbia's fault. No, I'm just kidding. It is Serbia that basically kicks things off, as we're going to see. The war, so many miscalculations happen. I feel like trying to pin the blame on one side or the other is kind of crazy. Those of you who've had me for other classes know that at the end of World War I, though, the war is blamed entirely on Germany. It's literally in the treaty that Germany is totally at fault and did all this bad stuff, and it's all their fault, and they have to pay for the whole war themselves, which was just crazy and provided phenomenal kindling for Adolf Hitler's movement. So, Serbia. This is Serbia right here. This is modern Serbia. We can look at old school Serbia. Let's see, Serbia, circa, oh shoot, I got to turn that on. Serbia, circa 1914. Let's do Serbia, circa 1914. Remember, Serbia had just gotten bigger. Serbia had just gotten bigger in 1914 because after the first Balkan War of 1911-1912, when Romania and Montenegro and Bulgaria and Serbia had ganged up on the Ottomans to kick them out of Europe, Bulgaria got all the best stuff. And so then, Romania and Serbia and whatnot were like, hey, you know what we should totally do is gang up on Bulgaria and take all their stuff. And so they do. And so here we go. Let's get a good image over here. Here we go. There's Serbia right here. So as you can see, pretty much like the modern day. It's become much bigger though. It's pretty powerful now. It can put, a couple 100,000 men into the field now with like modern weapons. They're becoming a real security threat in the eyes of the Austrian leadership. Their capital is Belgrade, just as today. Belgrade. Let's see. I'll just pull it up. Because as you can see, the state is basically the same size today. Serbia. There you go. There's Belgrade right there. And this was the border with Austria-Hungary. Okay, it's just Hungary. And apparently we can be there in 12 and a half hours. Just a quick 12 and a half hour flight. What do you say? There's Belgrade, beautiful city. There's Kosovo. I can't even start talking about Kosovo. Forget it. It's ruled from Belgrade by a king. These are all monarchies. All the empires that go to war in 1914 are all monarchies, except for which of the states is not a monarchy? There's only one. Vive la République. France, the Third Republic. So, but these are not top-down authoritarian, where the king just makes a decision and that's it. As we're going to see, all of them have some kind of elected body that they have to deal with, even if it's a super weak one, like the Russian one, which is easily the weakest. But they're also going to have ministries that they're accountable to. So the king does not just make decisions. A lot of times we say, Kaiser Wilhelm did this, or Poincaré did that, the Tsar did this. But really, it's a very complex decision-making process. For example, in the case of Belgrade, Karađorđević, the one who had taken power after the 1903 coup, he's still the king, but he is very old and ill and withdrawn. He's really not involved at all with these decisions. The Crown Prince Regent, Alexander, he's acting as de facto ruler. He's really kind of a plaything of the army. The problem with Serbia is there was very, very weak civilian control over the military. Now, you might be like, well, why? Well, let's just think. The last king, who the military didn't really like, what happened to him? He and his wife got shot like 100 times and chopped into a bunch of little pieces and thrown out the window of the palace. So, when they bring the new guy in, the new guy's probably a little nervous, right? A little, when you're thinking about the army comes and says, hey, we really need to do this. It's super important, Can't really explain why, but we need to do this. In the back of your mind that, I better not get on the wrong side of these guys here. And as it happens, Crown Prince Alexander thinks that Pan-Slavism, Greater Serbia, that Serbia doesn't have all the proper Serb lands yet. He's very much in the military. He not only is a little freaked out by the military, but he also thinks the military has the right idea. Nikolai Pasic, he is the prime minister. He was the leader of the Pan-Slav, Pan-Serb movement when it was still an Ottoman province. He was one of those dudes who was taking up arms against the Ottomans. So he was a radical revolutionary on behalf of Greater Serbia. Well, he's a politician. And he's really a political survivor. Politics in Serbia was insanely violent and very dangerous, especially because of this next thing that we're going to be talking about here. Pasic is trying to balance keeping the army and the nationalist organizations in check while also maintaining good relations with Russia and not poking Austria in the face too much. So he's really just trying to balance incredibly. And he's kind of a hilarious figure because anytime something was going to go down and he got wind of it, he'd just leave the country. Phenomenal political survivor. He finds out on the eve of the 1903 coup that hey, the army's going to go in there and kill that guy. He was like, gosh, I've been working so hard lately. You know what? Me and the wife and kids are going to go head down to the coast and take a little vacay. And so he just always gets out of Dodge when stuff's about to go down. And things are going to go down because there is a lot of paramilitary underground violent activity, and it's being coordinated by the head of Serbian military intelligence. Okay? Now, he's referred to as Apis. I'm not going to trouble you with his actual name because everyone just calls him Obvious. He is the head of Serbian military intelligence. He was the author of the 1903 coup that took out the Abranoviches, and he has this organization. Think back to our Carbonari lodges, right? The secret societies devoted to revolution and national greatness. He's the head of one called Unification or Death, also known as the Black Hand. And their goal is to destroy the Austrian monarchy. Now, as I just said, he's the head of Serbian intelligence. The Serbian government and military is full of these dudes, right? So this is a huge problem because this is the group that is going to fund, train, and arm all the little Bosnian Serb terrorists who go kill this guy. And so then when the Austrians say, we want an investigation into this, the Serbian government can't. They can't investigate it, because if they do investigate, or they allow the Austrians to come and investigate, which is what Austria is going to want to do, they're going to find out that everyone knew about this, including Passage. Passage literally knew that those dudes were on their way to kill this guy, and he claims that he sent a warning, and the Austrians say he didn't send a warning. I found two sources that say that one of the ambassadors said something like, really vague. So if he did send a warning, it was super vague. It was something like, we believe there may be some sort of plot against the heir's life. Instead of like, hey, if he goes to Sarajevo on the 28th of June, there's going to be dudes with bombs and revolvers there. So, could have maybe been a little more specific. Influential ambassadors here. Huge power player. As I said, the monarchy in Serbia is super weak. Nikolai Passage, the prime minister, also super weak. One of the most powerful players was a guy by the name of Hartwig, and he was the Russian ambassador in Belgrade. And this dude was a rabid pan-Serb. He believed in the project of Greater Serbia, and he was telling the military establishment, oh yeah, if you do this, Russia 100% has your back. No problem. We can definitely. We would love to help you out here. Let's see who else. And then the Spalikovic. Spalikovic then is the Serbian minister in Moscow, and he's also a very, very vocal pan-Serb nationalist. And between Hartwig and Spalikovic, this is where the Tsar is getting a lot of his information about the situation in Serbia. So he's not getting a balanced perspective of like, Your Majesty, there's actually like a ton of like super dangerous conspiracies and stuff against Austria, and they're trying to destabilize the monarchy and draw Russia into a war on its behalf. It's not like that. No, they say like, poor Serbia, just tiny poor Serbia. Our fellow Slavic Orthodox brother down here is just trying to make a little life for itself, but the vicious Austrians are always kicking it in the face and trying to stomp it and strangle it, and it's just the worst thing ever, and shouldn't we do something about this? That's the story that the Tsar is getting. So, Serbia, very, very weak politically, dominated by the military. The military has also legitimated itself through that one thing that tends to give a state institution legitimacy, which is victory. Go win some wars, right? Go win some wars, and they've been winning wars. Remember, they helped crush the Ottomans, kick them out of Europe. Then they, take a bunch of Bulgaria's territory away. The army's doing swell. So, Serbia, dominated by the military, and especially infiltrated with Black Hand operatives, who are devoted to the overthrow of the Austrian monarchy. They want it to dissolve. They're very concerned, especially with this guy, because if Franz Ferdinand creates a third throne in the empire, then that's going to be the biggest Slavic kingdom now. And so all of the Slavs in Serbian territory, they might start looking toward this new throne rather than towards Belgrade. So, I talked about Albania already. So, Greater Serbia, yep, Bosnia. Yes, there was a very large population of Serbs in Bosnia, and so when Austria is going to annex this is seen as problematic from the national Serb perspective, because those are Serbs who should be inside of Serbia, right? So you have the taking away of Bosnia and Herzegovina. You have the creation of Albania. It's just it does look. It's true. Austria was deliberately trying to keep Serbia from becoming larger and more powerful. Obviously, so like there is some truth to Hartwig and Spolajkovic who are telling the Tsar like, oh, Austria is just always trying to keep them down. There is some truth to that, of course. Their aims. What are the aims of Serbia in 1914? Unification of all Serbs under Serbian leadership. That means those in Bosnia and Herzegovina, those in Croatia, Slavonia, those in the southern Habsburg lands, in Austria and in Hungary, and in Dalmatia on the coast there. So I wonder if I can get a map of Greater Serbia. Greater Serbia, here you go, look at this. There you go. That's how big Serbia should be, according to these guys. Now, as I pull up a map of, map of the Balkans here. As we zoom over here, we can see that that's a huge territory. It's basically all of Bulgaria, all of North Macedonia, all of Albania, Montenegro. I mean, this is huge, right? This is a huge territory here. So this is what they want. So, now to accomplish this goal, they of course need to break Austria's hold over the northern Balkans here. To do this, they know that they're going to need Russia to back them up. It's true, Serbia's military power is growing. They're still going to get steamrolled by the Austrians. I shouldn't say steamrolled. They get defeated by the Austrians. They're not going to be able to win this for themselves. So they need to bring Russia into the war. Let me see, Bulgaria. I just want to talk a little bit about, I do need to talk about that. Let me talk about their neighbors here. Let me pull the map here and show the neighbors here. So, Serbia. Politically weak, dominated by military. Especially pan-Serb nationalists. I'm just going to put Black Hand there. Pan-Serb nationalists, Black Hand. Major opponent, Austria. They have some other opponents too, like Bulgaria. So I'll put minor. Major opponent, Austria. Minor opponents, Bulgaria / Greece. No, I'll talk about why that is. Major allies, I'm going to put allies because it's Russia, of course, but who is Russia tied to? France. And remember, who was providing all the loans to Serbia? It was France. So this is who they're relying on here. This is the situation in Serbia. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the bad blood here between Romania, Bulgaria, and Serbia here. Because Bulgaria is the only state that's going to wind up on the Central Powers side here. And there's a reason for that. And it has to do with territorial problems here. Okay? So for example, Romania. There are a large number of Romanians inside of Hungary. Specifically in a little place called Transylvania, which of course you're all familiar with from Dracula. So the Romanians are saying, ooh, when this war pops off, this would be a swell chance for us to grab that territory from Hungary. At the same time, Bulgaria is saying, Serbia is allied with Russia and France. I want some of this territory back that I lost from Serbia here in the Second Balkan War. Therefore, I am allied with the Central Powers because Serbia is part of the Entente Powers. I'm going to pull the other one here. Sorry. Bulgaria, yeah, that into Bulgaria. And then there was another one, sorry. Yeah, Bulgaria, they want to recover North Macedonia. North Macedonia was taken and divided up. So Bulgaria had gotten this as a result of the First Balkan War when they drove out the Turks. But then, about 6 months later, Serbia and Greece and Montenegro and Romania, they all set upon Bulgaria and took the territories from it that they want. And so Bulgaria's warring here is to take North Macedonia back from Greece and Serbia, who had divided that up there. And then I already covered Romania and Serbia and Bosnia. Okay, so I think I'm good there as far as territorial disputes. That just kind of helps explain why Romania wound up on the Entente side, because it wanted to take territory from Austria-Hungary. Ergo, they need to be on the Entente side. In the same way, Bulgaria wants to take territory from Serbia, which is on the Entente side. Ergo, it will be on the Central Powers side. And then, of course, Serbia is allied with Russia, so it's on the Entente side. All clear there? Mm-hmm. Or at least relatively clear. The Balkans are a huge mess. Here. So I'm going to talk very briefly about Bulgaria and Romania. So I only have 6 minutes left, and I don't want to dive into Austria-Hungary, which is our next major one. So, I did plan on talking a little bit about these minor Balkan states. So I'll do that now. Actually, I should probably leave this map up to be helpful here. The Kingdom of Bulgaria. Let's do Kingdom of Bulgaria. Kingdom of Bulgaria. 1914. It's the Kingdom of the Bulgars. Let's take a look. There it is. Kingdom of Bulgaria. Pretty sweet looking kingdom there. Let's see. Can't really see it very good. My apologies. Kingdom of Serbia. No, sorry. It's better. There. There. Kingdom of Bulgaria, right there. As you can see, it's pretty huge. Pretty huge. This is from 1942, but this is the area here. Wow. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, right here, Bulgaria. Bulgaria had actually been the original largest of the states. Remember, it had been a Russian satellite, but then it started to not be a very reliable proxy for Russian interests in the region. It started to want to do its own thing, specifically with soured relations, or one of the things with soured relations, is that the king of Bulgaria, who ruled from the capital city of Sofia, Tsar Ferdinand was his name, Tsar Ferdinand, he had dreams of taking the straits for himself. And of course, this is totally unacceptable if you're the Russians, right? This is not good. Here's Sofia, right here, I'll pull back a little bit. So there's Sofia in Bulgaria, right there. It's the capital. Very, very ambitious. He's distrustful of Russia after they supported Serbia in 1913 when they took all that territory away from Bulgaria. The Russians, though, were distrustful of Bulgaria because in that first Balkans war, when they drove the Ottomans out of the peninsula, Bulgaria very nearly winds up capturing Constantinople. Even though the Russians are saying, like, whoa, you guys are winning a lot of battles there, maybe you might want to slow down a little bit, you know? They're like, no, we're going to go try and take that, which would not be good for Russia, obviously. They, in turn, become very, very pro-Austrian and anti-Russian. It's a major change. And this is one of the things, you know, it's all kind of happening simultaneously. Like, all of these things are kind of happening at the same time, this pivot. It is a constitutional monarchy. Bulgaria, of course, one of the reasons they wind up on the Central Power side is because they have beef with Serbia, they have beef with Greece, they have beef with Romania. All of these had taken territory away. Remember, Serbia and Greece had taken northern Macedonia. Romania had taken the Dobruja. And Macedonia is really the central obsession of their politics here. So that's all they're looking to do is jump into this war and take that little bit of territory back. And then in the case of Romania, as I said, their interest here is, number one, King Carol is a German-born. He is a German-born Hohenzollern prince. He is very loyal to Germany and Austria, but Romanian public opinion is like a thing now, and you have these national assemblies and stuff who are going to help drive policies, and the government, if they want to maintain the support of the people, they need to always have one eye on public opinion. And so even though the crowned head is very personally inclined towards Austria and toward Germany, I almost said Prussia, the population wants Transylvania. And you can't get Transylvania unless you go take it from Hungary, because Hungary is not in a giving mood right now. So that's how that happens. And yes. What else I want to say here? Because I think that's where I want to leave it. Yeah, because I'm at 54, and we still have to jump into talking about Austria, which I'll save for next time. So next time we're going to do Austria and Russia and Germany, and so that will be not next week because we aren't here next week, correct? We won't see you next week. So it'll be the first week of December. Yeah, that'll be perfect because we'll do Austria and Russia and Germany, and then we'll do, on Wednesday, we'll do France and England. So, okay. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, let me know. I'm always here for you all. Otherwise, have a wonderful holiday week and safe travels to anyone who is going to be on the road, of course.
Have a good break.
Bulgaria and Turkey approved that NATO was totally useless. We had guys stationed over there, but they couldn't